was definitely a new experience for sure, for all of us, obviously. Um, this was my first time on the planning committee, so I hadn't participated on the planning committee in previous years. So it was definitely a lot stepping straight into the co-lead role, basically managing, overseeing, I guess, the entire process and managing communications within the team. But obviously, with it being virtual, I think that there were a lot of challenges that we had to initially talk about, discuss, and kind of figure out how we were going to, um, modify some of the things that they had done in earlier summits to accommodate this year's environment. And so, um, a lot of the planning was kind of centered around how do we make this experience as engaging as possible for our attendees. And that had always been a focus in previous years. And being able to replicate that in the virtual environment obviously is very challenging. And I think that we had to come up with a lot of creative ways and be very deliberate with a lot of our choices when it came to little intricacies on Zoom and little intricacies on the other virtual platform that we use, GatherTown, in order to kind of ensure that the attendees were getting everything that we wanted them to get out of the summit. I think addressing those challenges early on was one of the really unique experiences of planning the 2021 summit in particular, and also being able to execute that on the day of was not only a difficult thing to achieve, but also really rewarding once we were able to do that as we had planned.
Yeah, and I absolutely second everything Ivan just mentioned. Just wanted to also reemphasize that yes, our goal was to make this event as similar to what the in-person sports summit would be by mimicking all of the different events and things that went onto a virtual platform. So that looked like, first we analyzed what the summit looked like in person, and then we broke every element down into each of the individual events, how we cater to both the attendees that are coming and as well as, our special speakers that are coming, and addressing all of those little problems and then shifting them over to what they could look like in a virtual environment. Again, we are constrained by these little screens on Zoom, but I often find that sometimes constraints give rise to a lot of opportunity and allow us to be more creative in that sense. So we were able to get creative and apply some of the things we learned in our, classes, testing environments, spending time with friends on Zoom, and apply all of those little details to make this event come to life and hone in on everything that we could do to ensure that, our goals are being met and people are happy and able to interact with people. For me, it was awesome. I'm an undergraduate, and I believe Ivan and I were actually just talking about this beforehand. We think all of the undergrads that were there were actually student athletes, which was awesome. We are on a team of 25, I believe, Ivan, around there, yeah. 23 to 25. Okay. And the undergrads that we did have, like I said, were all student athletes. And truly it's an experience like I've never had before. I don't think there's been one club or event where I've had where, I'm surrounded by many student athletes. And I think our student athletes are amazing, both driven on the field, or off the field, they're driven on the field. And this was kind of an interesting integration of the two, where they were hard workers, but this was also a very athletically oriented event. And I think it was wonderful for us to all connect.
Yeah, and I think we were able to hear stories from some of the teammates that we were able to work with, perspectives from other teams, and I think that we were able to bond over our experiences as student athletes at MIT, and I think that just contributed to our team being so strong, communications-wise and in efficacy. So being able to hear different perspectives from, because we had a lot of representation across the board in terms of sports. So hearing all of the different perspectives on MIT, being an MIT student athlete was definitely really cool.
Yeah, it's for me, it's great to be able to share with undergrad. When I was an undergrad, I never even thought about working in sports. I was course 10, I was a chemical engineering major. I did a minor in economics. I went into management consulting, not really knowing where I was going to land, and kind of fell into sports. And so to have, graduate students, but especially undergraduates for me that are interested in sports, whether it's sports and technology, whether it's sports management, is something that I love being able to talk with them and share my thoughts and share insights about what I do or what we've learned or what kind of things professional sports teams are thinking about today. So for me, it's always a great experience to do that. I love having the ability to speak with young people about what I do and ask them about what they're thinking, what they may want to do one day. It's fantastic. I mean, that's, everyone thinks about, whether it's you want to work in sports, whether it's for a tech company or even like what I do, right, on the team or the league side. What so many people want to get involved, and I think the question we have, people like myself have, is like, do you like sports or do you want to work in sports, right? Because if you love sports, go do something else and buy a ticket, right, and go to games and be a fan, and that's a very different way of engaging with sports and when you actually work in sports. And so when people do things like work on a sports conference, work within the athletics department in some way, right, whether it's an intern in the communications department or whatever it may be, and they say, I still want to do this, it's like, okay, well, now you're starting to understand what it means to work in sports and you still want to do it, then we're more interested than someone who just says, I've played sports my whole life and it's my dream to work in sports. It's like, well, do you really know what, I always look at it like this. Everyone likes going to parties, right? Going to parties is a lot of fun. But do you like hosting parties? Do you like throwing parties? Because when you're hosting the party, you're not really enjoying the party the same way the guests are, right? It's a different type of enjoyment. And so I think that's the thing that we fall into a lot, where you may see people who come into sports and realize that they love sports, but they actually don't love working in sports. And so anyone who does any work like that, it's a great sign that this person's starting to understand what it means to work in sports. And those people are very attractive to people in the sports industry.
Sure, yeah. So I spent an afternoon, I guess about a month ago now, on the MIT Sports Summit. It was myself, Matt Lindsay, Mike Fitzgerald, and we had an hour-long conversation about the state of sports, but more specifically, the state of data in sports, the state of information in sports, and some of the modern challenges in not just what data exists and how we can collect it, but also how we can turn all of the information into actionable insights for the sports teams that we work for, talking about the communication piece and the relationship piece that is equally or more important than the actual data piece. So it was a joy to be able to hop on with those guys and share perspectives from my time with the Mariners, but also hear both with the Diamondbacks and then across sports and with the Patriots, what kinds of things are common threads versus things that are maybe specific to our given sports or organizations. So really insightful, and I think good opportunity for everybody to learn on the call. No, it was awesome. And I think the student athletes in particular, but also just the MIT student body in general, is starting to see a path towards working in sports, see that there is space to help sports teams understand their respective sports and win games in their respective sports. And so I think that increasing the visibility of folks who are doing this now and the resources that are available and having conversations about what things really matter when working in the sports industry and how to break into it increases the accessibility of working in sports. And I think it's a non-traditional outcome for most MIT student athletes, but it does provide a lot of chances in today's day and age to marry the science and technology side that we do as students, and then also the sports that we all fell in love with to come play at MIT and do both of those things professionally as a career.
One is what we just kind of harped on a little bit, which is the communication with people in the industry. Just by having the experience of dealing with, literally hundreds of emails a day, basically, and needing to be super organized so that everyone's receiving the right information, and we're being careful about how we're wording our emails and stuff. Just that, having that experience of needing to be that organized and careful, I think, taught me a lot of lessons in terms of how I can be professional. And obviously, as someone who is now transitioning, or I'm at a point in my life where I'm transitioning into a professional atmosphere, being able to take this experience in particular, I think that I can learn a lot about what it means to be organized, what it means to just be extremely careful in the way that you communicate with people, and building and maintaining relationships as well. The other thing I was going to say was from a leadership standpoint, on this team, I think that there are a lot of challenges with doing this whole planning process remotely. Essentially not having opportunities to be in person and meet, to do a lot of the planning phase stuff. I think that would have been nice. It would have been nice from a community building standpoint. It would have been nice from making new friends standpoint. But being able to do it virtually was a new challenge for us. I think that we were able to take advantage of the opportunity, though, to really try and make as much of a connection as possible with each of the people on our team. And in the end, managing 25 or overseeing communications over 25 people is not easy, but I think that it was something that we did a pretty good job of, considering the circumstances, and is also something that I think can help me as a leader moving forward.
I think there's many things to take away from this, just like Ivan had, and especially like personal things to take away from it, but also, an understanding about MIT as well. I think personally, just like Ivan said, learns how to maintain and grow, as well as at times initiate professional relationships, and, how to go about, ensuring that relationship stays in the MIT Sports Lab community, from now on into many years. As a team leader, how to organize, especially, I think, of course, everything is different virtually, but I think an element that is also different is communication on an online portal, because in person, there's so much space to like talk, go move towards somebody next to you, have like a one-on-one conversation here, have a one-on-one conversation there. And, running a team over Slack is very different. But I often find that this in a virtual setting, I find a lot more depth in the conversations that I'm able to have, because sitting on Zoom, like a one-to-one channel between another person, there's a lot of time and space you can cover, especially sitting at hours at a time. So I think learning how to maximize time on Zoom. Something I also took away from this was it takes a city, it takes a whole community to put this event on. And I think something that has, just been ingrained into me since I've come to the MIT community, is one of the reasons why I wanted to come to the MIT community, is how collaborative this environment is. You see it in an educational setting, but you also see that mindset ingrained into everyone else you're working with. So something I took away from that was, to always know that, and, that makes you able to like rely on other people, and it like facilitates the ease of communication and teamwork with other people.